Every mission in 007 First Light starts off like a Hitman mission. You run around looking for ways to get in without getting detected. And because these two games are made by IO Interactive, there are lots in common. First off, maps are huge. Hitman has more sprawled out maps, while First Light has multiple different sections in any given map. I'm not a big fan of spending so much time in just one area. First Light only has 7 maps, and that includes the training area, the smaller prologue map, and the headquarters. Of course, there is an entire mission in London outside HQ, but my point still stands. You will spend anywhere from 2 to 3 hours in these maps. For a Bond game, I think more maps with smaller missions would have worked better, but the maps that are here are bigger, more complex than you would think. That is true for First Light and even more so for Hitman. These locations are almost as important as gameplay. Let's start off with First Light. I personally love 2 maps, Slovakia and Vietnam. Mauritania is not far behind. The London mission Nightfall is definitely my least favorite. First, because the map is just a building, and boy is it an annoying building. You spend the first 40 minutes opening doors, that is it, with the help of robot vacuum cleaners no less. It starts off really dull, but interactions between Greenway and Bond and then the action sequence is off the charts awesome, so even the worst location has plenty to offer. Slovakia and Vietnam are great throughout, ironically the maps most like Hitman. Mission design is linear, but those 2 maps would fit perfectly in a Hitman game. The one in Africa is Dev's vision for Bond games, I think. It starts off with a Hitman-like social stealth mission story section, then you have a linear proper sneaking around stealth section, then Bond villain hijinks, a little break from the action, and then end with a bombastic action sequence with Uncharted-like set pieces. So these maps are tailored around that format instead of giving you a big playground from the start. Locations could have been more Bond-like, except for 2 maps. I'm not really dying to explore the others. I'll certainly replay sections in every map, but that's because the action is amazing, not because the locations are. Hitman 3 was a huge success. I played every Hitman from Codename 47, which is 26 years old now. Hitman 3 captured the magic of those old games better than the first 2 in this recent trilogy. Main reason for me are the maps. Every map is so damn well built. They are contrasting as well. You are in this murky English palace one mission, and then you go to a vibrant neon lit China. The problem with fewer maps is felt here also, but it's not as noticeable because Hitman is way more replayable than First Light. And also, people don't just play Hitman 3. The trilogy is bundled into one, so you have 3 games as maps basically. But for this comparison, let's just look at Hitman 3 maps. You have Dubai, England, Berlin, China, Argentina and Romania, which is not a full map, but it is a very James Bond-like mission though. Hitman 3 doesn't have levels, it has many open worlds. NPCs have their own routines, targets included, but these routines feel more realistic, more natural. Targets don't just go into empty spaces or obscure closets all alone for no reason. NPCs can be fooled, but if you push your luck too much, they will resist and do what's best for them. Mission stories sometimes felt like a distraction in the first 2 entries, but this game has perfected them. They no longer feel like long, useless, boring sections anymore. Why would you bother running around pretending to be a movie producer when you could just kick the target off the roof? In Hitman 3, that is not the case. Would you rather be a detective solving an impossible murder, or do you just want to go and focus on the job where your target is a tiny old woman? Mission stories are what makes these maps so replayable, but it's just one way of doing it. The mission in China is awesome for a completely different reason. They basically built a stunning neighborhood in China. Stunning is an understatement. Just look at all the lights on Agent 47 shiny head. When it comes to locations, Hitman 3 is still IO Interactive's best work. Let's get to gameplay now. This is where these games are a little different from each other. First Light is an action stealth title, but even the stealth here is different to Hitman's changing disguises every 10 minutes stealth. Stealth in First Light is the good old sneaking around behind wooden boxes kind, But thankfully, that's not all there is to it. They basically created a James Bond brand of stealth. You sneak around, if you get spotted, you charm your way in. Every now and then, Bond doesn't mind being a chameleon like Agent 47, but you aren't gonna be looking for closets in every room you enter. The game restricts open combat in a way even Hitman doesn't. You can fire up your pistol whenever you want, but in First Light, until the game gives you the license to kill, you are stuck with melee. That's it. Which is a strange gameplay mechanic. I guess they tried to make gameplay make sense with the story, but we had no problem with Nathan Drake shooting everyone in sight. I don't think anyone would have minded 007 doing that as well. But this element adds to gameplay actually. You're forced to think on your feet of different ways to proceed, be it melee, Q's gadgets, or watchdogs like hacking. One thing about my experience is I used everything the game taught me. I usually just stick to basic mechanics while ignoring the rest, but I made use of all the tools, all the approaches, melee, open gunplay, bluffing, disguises, luring, everything. Hitman 3's gameplay is a slow burn. Even compared to original Hitmans, these games are slow and methodical. Ironically, in a game named Hitman, taking people out feels wrong. Even targets. If you assassinate them in anything less than the perfect way, you feel like you failed. That's why replaying is so addictive. These maps aren't designed for one playthrough, not at all. You need a few at least to see everything these maps have to offer. Gameplay takes the back seat almost. You're mostly walking around looking at stuff, waiting for enemies to go somewhere, eavesdropping conversations. You do this for hours on end. It slowly builds and you finally get the reward if you manage to find a clever way to do the job. The game is built on social stealth. Even regular sneaking around feels a little wrong. I like the balance in the earlier games, but this is what Hitman is now. The payoff to all the sneaking around is always amazing though. Once everything falls in place and you get the creative kill, it is so worth it. This is controversial, but I am going with First Light for gameplay. There's more variety, missions are fun throughout, I enjoyed stealth. Some missions were dull, opening doors for an hour was annoying, but for the most part First Light is consistent. The plot in First Light is actually pretty good. I didn't have high hopes. IO Interactive aren't exactly known for their stories. I was pleasantly surprised. It's not going to keep you 100% hooked, but the game has enough to make you not skip cutscenes. It's not entirely because of the story itself, but the characters. Very early on, characters are given time to shine. There's a pretty big event early which wouldn't have worked without you caring at least a little about the people involved. Even after that, the game continues to develop characters, sometimes at the cost of slowing down gameplay. In the first half of the mission Nightfall, you're just walking around opening doors. That sequence is there just purely to develop Greenway. That is the most lackluster 45 minutes in the entire game, and it is still not without highlights. Bond himself is great, witty, smarmy, and full of one-liners. It took me a while to get on board with such a young Bond, but once I did, I actually liked his journey. He's closer to a Nathan Drake than movie Bond. It fits well with gameplay as well. This is not a 2-hour movie. We failed for about 10 hours straight before getting any success. It will be interesting to see Bond's journey in upcoming games. A fully realized Bond with gameplay like this will be interesting. Hitman 3 is the best Agent 47 story, but it is still painfully average. Except for Diana, everyone is two-dimensional. Sometimes by design. Agent 47 isn't gonna win any personality awards. The overall plot is, as usual, too convoluted without any reason. Towards the end, it gets better. This being Agent 47's farewell. I played every game in the series now for years on end, from Codename 47 to this, and he is one of my favorite characters. So towards the end, I was very invested. But this round still goes to First Light. Neither of these stories is gonna stick with you in the long term, but First Light tries harder, has a bigger cast with likable characters, and has classic Bond charm. While First Light wins this comparison, gameplay design is almost tailor-made for me. It is a little too linear, but that is by design. You can't have Uncharted-like sequences while wandering around like Agent 47. Speaking of Uncharted, click the video on screen to see Uncharted 4 compared with 007 First Light. Let me know your pick in the comment section below. Like, comment and subscribe. If you like these kind of videos, there is a lot more to come. Thanks for watching and have a great day wherever you are.